All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back and Happy New Year to another Getting Technical episode with Dan Gillespie and myself, Mason Day, here at JR Peters. And today we're going to be breaking down one of our nutrition schedules. And realistically, we're talking about all of our nutrition schedules. But for examples today, we're going to be using the JAX 3-2-1 schedule. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about a lot of different things that pertain to this schedule. You know, we talked about EC and pH and understanding, different formulas and what they should be doing. And we've always referenced this schedule, but a lot of that information can sometimes be overwhelming. And today we want to jump on and really take this schedule that should be your guide for having, the grow of your life and really break it down and, kind of explain what goes into it. So take it away, Dan.
Yeah, Mason. So let's do it. So let's start with the formulas here. So if we look at our first section here in this all the way to the left, we have all the formulas that are going to be being used. And we've talked about this in the previous video, how these formulas are determined that are going to make up this schedule. It's going to be mainly dictated by your source water. But as we move along this schedule here, we're looking at parts per million. And we see here we have parts per million of N or magnesium. So what this is going to pertain to, Mason, is the concentration of nitrogen or the concentration of magnesium that each formula is going to deliver to the plant at the specified mixing rate outlined in the particular schedule. So in this column, this ppm of nitrogen or ppm of magnesium, this is going to be equal to milligram per liter. So again, this refers to the concentration. So basically telling us how much nitrogen or how much magnesium we're getting from that formula. So this is different than the ppm scale that is going to be used to measure the total strength of the soluble salts with a meter. So the reference ppm and the reference EC that are used to measure soluble salts, that's going to be found up at the top of our schedule under the plant stage section. It's just important to remember that this reference EC and ppm do not take the source water EC into account. So if your source water does contain a starting EC, you'll want to add that to this reference EC.
Okay. All right. That explains a lot. I'm sure to our viewers and listeners out there and to me as well, because we get a lot of questions about ppms. And, on here, there's two places. But if I'm looking at this, so let's start with, the clone formula right there, that JAX 15,6,17 clone. Mm-hmm. And I look over slightly to the right and it says 125 ppms nitrogen. That's not what I'm reading in my ppm reader, but that's more so what I'm getting when I use it at this rate. I'm getting 125 parts per million nitrogen in the solution, correct?
Exactly, Mason.
All right, so we're going to need to mix 315, roughly and a half grams of this formula per 100 gallons of water, or 3.15 grams per gallon of water. I like that easy math with tens and 100. To get to that 125 parts per million of nitrogen. And that's where we really make our recommendation, right? Is based on what that nitrogen need is. Correct, Dan?
Exactly. So we want to be looking at how much of a particular nutrient we're delivering to the plant. So you're exactly right, Mason. So what that's saying is by mixing the 15,6,17 at a rate of 3.15 grams per gallon of water, we are going to be delivering 125 parts per million of nitrogen to the plant at the propagation stage. And that will result in an EC of roughly 1.1, assuming that the source water EC is 0.0, which would be 550 parts per million on the 500 ppm scale.
And if let's say our source water has a 0.1 EC, does that change our target EC to 1.2?
Yeah, essentially you would just be adding your source water EC to this reference EC.
Perfect. All right. So then if I go, I go from the 15, 6, 17 clone, I can see the 125, and then I see the grams, the dry ounces, and the pounds. I like the different measurements depending on what kind of scale you're using. And then I see that to the right of that, if I look at the top, it says propagation, and there's a check mark in that box. But then if I go over, so let's say, it's time to move out of the propagation stage, and I'm moving into the vegetative stage. For this one, there's no more checkbox in that 15, 6, 17 clone. So I see check marks in the part A, which is the 5, 12, 26. I see check marks for the 1500 part B, and I see a check mark in the Epsom salt box. And I can see that for the vegetative stage, the check mark is there. But then if I go back to the left, I see, 378 grams roughly part A. I see 252 grams for part B, and just about 100 grams for Epsom salts and that's per 100 gallons. So when we move into that, we can just kind of see that those three are used all in the vegetative state.
Exactly, Mason. So that's kind of where that 3, 2, 1 comes in. So the in the vegetative state here, we're using the 5, 12, 26 at a rate of 50 parts per million nitrogen, the 1500 part B at a rate of 100 parts per million nitrogen, and then our Epsom salt is going to provide about 20 to 25 parts per million magnesium. And then that 3, 2, 1 kind of comes from, it's 3 grams roughly of the part A, roughly 2 grams of the part B, and then roughly a gram of the Epsom salt per gallon of water. So that's kind of where that 3, 2, 1 comes in. And that's going to be, what's going to really push our plants.
And what happens after this vegetative state, Dan?
Yep. Yeah, so as we transition the crop, we're obviously going to have to move the crop from a vegetative state into that bud set stage, which is going to be the start of the 12-12 photo period. So about the first week or two of flower. And from there, Mason, we want to begin using our 10-30-20 bloom and the Epsom salt. So we can discontinue the 3-2-1, and we're using our 10-30-20 bloom and our Epsom salt for a short burst for this 1 to 2 weeks at that bud set stage. And this formula is really designed, this 10-30-20, the nutrient ratio found in this formula, it's going to signal to the plant, let's shut down vegetative growth and begin flower and bud production here.
All right. So I see the 10-30-20 bloom, and you're telling me that that's a short burst formula. We're not using that for the whole bloom stage for flower. Yeah. I know that sometimes that gets confusing, in classic, examples out there. People think they have a veg and a bloom, but when we work with our 10-30-20 bloom, that's really just to bring on the bud set. And what you're saying is with our programs, you're actually switching right back after that 1 to 2 week short burst period back into the same formulas you were using during the vegetative stage.
Yep, exactly, Mason. So you'll see on this schedule here, after that 1 to 2 week period of using that 10-30-20, we're going to go back to the 3-2-1, the part A, part B, and the Epsom salt. So we get a lot of great questions about this, and often growers may express some concern about this, particularly maybe providing a little bit too much nitrogen in the flower stage. But working with our growers, and as more and more university research starts to come out, and as many growers already know, cannabis and most of these fruiting crops and flowering crops are fairly heavy feeders. So 150 to 200 parts per million nitrogen in the flower range does seem to be optimum for most cannabis cultivars and strains.
Well, that makes sense. Cannabis, heavy feeder. It kind of sounds like myself, heavy feeder. Like, keep me away from the snack table. That's all I got to say. No, but so what you're also saying, Dan, is that our growers don't need to be worried about overfeeding at full strength. I know that a lot of folks are scared of full strength. They don't want to burn something. But we are going to reduce that nitrogen down in that late flower stage is what you're saying. If I can see that correctly with the Jack 7, 15, 30, the finish, we're only taking it down to 100 parts per million nitrogen there.
Yep, exactly, Mason. So you said it exactly right. So as we approach this late flower stage, so about 1 to 2 weeks before the clear water flush, we're going to reduce our nitrogen rate, as we see over here, to 100 parts per million nitrogen. by using the 7-15-30 finish. So this formula is really going to provide elevated levels of potassium while keeping our nitrogen rate nice and low. And this has been shown to really enhance the quality of the final product of the flour.
All right, I see. So, it looks like we're getting to the end here on the schedule. We talked a little bit about finish, but then if I go, and that's where for the late flour and for 1 to 2 weeks, but then I see the next thing is a 4 to 7 day flush. So we are wrapping up with a flush, right, Dan?
Yeah, Mason, this is a great question, and it's a great debate. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not to flush before harvest. And unfortunately, due to the lack of peer-reviewed cannabis research, currently there's not a great data-backed answer to this. There is starting to be more research published on this subject. So we are starting to learn a little bit more. But based on the anecdotal evidence from Jack's growers, it has been reported that a 4 to 7 day clear water pH adjusted flush has been shown to improve the final product.
All right, cool. So I see, and I'm sure that as things get more commonplace, and universities realize that they should be doing research on this product, and the government agrees, we'll see more of this research come out and have a better understanding of that flush.
Certainly, we definitely will.
All right, so this is it. Like, you're saying that I can come in, take this grow schedule, use these formulas at these rates, and I'm going to have success. Is there anything else that I should be adding besides the Jacks and the Epsom salts here?
As far as plant nutrition goes, Mason, this nutrition schedule contains everything that you need. You do not need anything else in terms of plant nutrition. There's no need for the addition of CalMags and other supplements. CalMag is actually already in these products. You're going to be getting your calcium from the 1500 Part B and your magnesium from the Epsom salt. So if you do need to adjust the rates of calcium or magnesium, you can do so by adjusting those formulas rather than adding in additional components. As far as bioadditives and microorganism additives go, Mason, Tribus is one that's very popular among Jack's growers and seems to work quite well. But we have seen great results both with and without bioadditives, microorganisms, and those types of things. And our fertilizers are compatible with all commercially available products that I have personally come across if they are used properly.
All right. What about just real quick, when it comes to those bioadditives, should we be where in the process should they be adding them when they mix them?
It's a good question.
Or should they be applying them separately and not mixing them with the fertilizer?
That's a good question, Mason. I would have to defer to the bioadditive manufacturer on that. I would think either prior or after the fertilizer is added, but I would think it's probably a little bit of a case-by-case basis based on what the additive is.
All right, that sounds reasonable. They'll have, obviously it's their product. They would have a better idea of when to throw that in. So I think that just about wraps it up here on this schedule. Look, we covered so much in this schedule, and all the targets are there. Is there anything else that people need to know about these schedules?
The only other thing that I'll add, Mason, is that the feeding rates outlined here and available online, they are mainly intended to be used as kind of a continuous liquid feed, so constant feeding with every watering. But, these rates, they may need to be adjusted based on how often you're feeding, your source water conditions, the type of system that you're using, and other conditions as well. So, if you ever do need help with that, you can always reach out to us, but we will be touching on some more of those subjects in later videos as well.
All right. So constant liquid feed. So constant feeding. I think that's a strategy that I'm going to take into my own life. So
please send snacks.
No, but awesome. And if people, need to adjust to this, just reach out to us. That's what we're here for. Obviously this is our, kind of schedule for you to take out and use, but we like to say that we want you to be the scientists too. And, you're going to run into small tweaks and things along the way, but let us know. And if you need any help along the way, we're here to help you grow for the whole process. So until next time, thanks for hanging out with us today. And we'll be back next week with more Getting Technical. See you guys.